Forget New Year, New You. This season is about slowing down, locking the doors, and cozying up at home with the one you really want to do nothing with. Your dog. After the holiday chaos, those quiet nights with a blanket, a podcast, and your pup feel like the reset you actually need. Ollie helps make those moments easier with fresh protein-packed meals made from real human-grade ingredients, so your dog can enjoy some quality comfort food too. Choose from 5 recipes and get a personalized plan for your dog's needs. Meals arrive perfectly proportioned with a scoop and storage container, so serving is fast and mess-free. And with Ollie's in-app on-demand health screenings, supporting your dog is easy, ensuring more cuddles for many years to come. Visit ollie.com/truecrime and use code TRUECRIME for 60% off your first box.
On November 9th, 2003, an open house took place in Kalamazoo, Michigan. At 5:05 p.m., the realtor of the property, Kelly Todd Brewer, was getting ready to call it a day. The open house had started at 2. Kelly, 41, was a veteran realtor at the time. 5 people came through her open house, and by the end, Kelly had lost track of time, her mind drifting as she caught up on her work and wrote an advertisement for another listing. Right after she realized what time it was, another potential home buyer unexpectedly appeared.
This guy came in, and so I stood up, I greeted him, and he was wearing sweats. So he was wearing zippered up sweatshirt and then sweatpants. And, like he'd been out for a run or walk or whatever. Actually, he was on a bike.
The man asked if he could come through and see the house. Kelly said yes.
My first impression was he was very tan, very well groomed, wore a lot of cologne. I tried to get him to sign in. He did not sign in for me.
Kelly showed off the house. She learned the man's story. He was chatty. He talked about owning a home for sale on Bronson Boulevard, but he didn't like his realtor. He lived with a girlfriend or wife, Kelly wasn't sure which, who was pregnant. The man did the grand tour, saw the bedrooms upstairs, the bathrooms. Then he went into the basement, which had been remodeled to have a rec room, plus your typical basement stuff like a water heater and a furnace.
I wasn't following him through the house. I don't, at open houses, you don't do that. You just let people look. And if they have a question and they call you to, say, what can you tell me about this? You go and you answer it.
While the man checked out the basement, Kelly cleaned up the refreshments and got her materials to go home. And then another group, a trio, arrived to see the house. They stayed briefly, Kelly spoke to them, and then they left. But the man was still there. Now he had more questions.
At one point, he wanted to look in the attic upstairs. So he asked me to help him pull down the attic. It was a pull-down attic with the stairs.
They had trouble pulling the attic stairs down, so they couldn't access the space. Then the man asked if he could see the basement again. Kelly's cell phone rang. It was her husband. She promised she would call him back in 5 or 10 minutes. The man, who overheard Kelly talking on the phone, went downstairs. He wanted Kelly to join him. He was curious, did the house have central air conditioning? Kelly explained about the new furnace and new window air conditioning unit. The man kept talking. He again brought up his own realtor he was unhappy with and suggested maybe Kelly could be his realtor instead. Kelly later testified in court. He was already starting to make me a little uncomfortable, so I know that I said to him at that point, well, you will have to call me. I cannot call you. It's considered soliciting and it's unethical.
He kept me down there for a while, and I do remember he was behind me at one point in the rec room, and I backed into him. So he was very close behind me. And that I should have had bells go off. Ding, 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 ding. But they didn't. And then he had a question over in where the mechanicals were. And then the conversation started to take kind of a weird turn. I was uncomfortable. It took on some sexual connotations or very heavy flirting. And I thought to myself, okay, I don't like where this is going. I need to remove myself from this politely and professionally. And so when I turned to do so, that is when he attacked me.
In part one, we told you about the murder of 34-year-old Maria Willson that occurred in October 2001. Maria had been found naked in her car that was dumped on an embankment on a dead-end street. She had been strangled to death. A man named Tim Forshee was the lead suspect, and within days of her murder, Tim stole money from the fast food restaurant where he worked and went on the run in a stolen SUV. Tim was eventually found hiding out in a tourist town in northern Michigan. He was arrested and served just 9 months on an embezzlement charge for the stolen money. In today's episode, part 2, Kelly Todd Brewer helps us continue to tell the story by recounting her own harrowing encounter and everything that followed. This is Jillian in partnership with Law and Crime. You are listening to Court Junkie, episode 291, part 2. Kelly Todd Brewer later took the stand in a courtroom to recount how Tim Forshee had attacked her in November 2003. I turned to exit the basement into the rec room, she said, and I felt his hands go to my shoulders, like in a shoulder squeeze. And it flashed in my head at that point that I thought, I'm really in trouble.
And my first thought was, uh-oh, I'm going to be raped. So I was steeling myself for that and anticipating that was coming. But he never attempted to rape me. He was way past that.
Tim began strangling her. At one point, I believe he pushed us to the ground, she testified. He ended up on his back. I ended up on his chest, on my back, with the bottom half of my body between his legs. And he continued to strangle me with his hands from behind. She told the court what was going through her mind. First of all, you're incredulous that it's happening to you. You can't believe it. And then you don't understand why this person is doing this to you. I remember thinking about my daughters. I remember thinking, he's not just trying to subdue me anymore. I feel like he was trying to kill me. And I thought about my dad, who I lost 2 years ago this month, who I was very close to. I thought, okay, if this is the way I'm going to go, this is going to be the way I die. I want it over quick. And so I stopped fighting him so much. I was clawing at his hands, arms. I relaxed and I stopped fighting so much. I felt like I was very close to blacking out, but I didn't black out. Instead, something else happened. Tim's grip loosened and Kelly got some desperately needed air. But then, he clamped down on my neck. It seemed even harder, and he kept strangling me, she testified. But she was able to get words out. She wanted to see her twin girls again. I just want to live for them, Kelly told him. Tim's response was silence. Kelly testified, I know that I tried to remain very calm and collected. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I thought about trying to get away. The basement stairs were right there. The door at the top of the stairs was unlocked. But I felt my gut instinct told me that he would overpower me again if I tried to flee. And I also felt that if I did anything to set him off, anything impulsive, that I would set him off again, and I didn't want his hands around my neck again. Kelly asked permission if she could sit and slowly propped herself up.
In my mind, when I stopped struggling, I thought I started talking to him right away, but I must have laid there for a little bit of time. Because I've asked people, like I asked psychologists that I knew very well. And I asked my brother-in-law, who was at the time was a Sarasota County Sheriff's detective, why didn't he, when he knew he hadn't killed me, when he knew I wasn't, dead, and I started talking to him, why didn't he start strangling me again? And, I don't know that I ever get a completely adequate answer to that, but basically that, whatever he had already gotten off, so to speak, on the whole attack. And so I guess he didn't feel compelled to finish the job.
She then started asking him questions.
I shifted and tried to make everything about him. So I asked him when I started talking if I had done something to upset him, if I had said something to upset him, if I reminded him of somebody that had been hurtful to him. So I really kind of shifted things to him and kind of, I guess in some ways made him the victim instead of the perpetrator.
And then Tim started rubbing her back and stroking her hair as though he was trying to comfort her.
Everything said to me, stay calm. And so finally, I got up and he actually followed me up the stairs and out of the house.
Kelly shut off the lights in the house, picked up her papers, grabbed her coat and her car keys, and together they left. Tim's bike was parked right by Kelly's car. With shaking hands, she unlocked her vehicle. Tim said he wanted to follow her home and apologize to her husband. Kelly told him she just wanted to go home and that she needed to pick up dinner for her family. Tim then offered to buy her dinner. That was the least he could do, he said. Maybe he could see the house again on another day with his girlfriend?
He was struggling still, I think, with whether or not to let me go, because he stood at my car holding on to the window because they dusted it for prints, but I think he had gloves on, if I remember correctly. And, I told him I said, just go home. I said, just forget about this. I forgive you.
Kelly's phone rang, her husband calling again as Tim stood next to her. She answered and pretended that everything was normal. She knew she wasn't safe yet.
But eventually he did let go of the door window. And I, shut it, locked it. He got on his bike, took off.
Kelly was finally free.
I do remember backing out of the driveway. I called my husband and told him to get the hell out of the house because I had mentioned to him at some point that I lived over in the Hillcrest neighborhood, grab the girls and go to Mary and Rick's because that's where I was going. And then I remember driving down Montrose Ave and I remember thinking to myself, nobody is going to frickin' believe, and I used a different word, nobody is going to believe me. Nobody's going to believe that this happened to me.
Looking back, Kelly remembered the pull-down attic and how they had struggled to get it open.
Fortunately, I think in retrospect, we couldn't get those stairs down because I do believe if he had managed to kill me, that is where he would have stashed my body.
Kelly was alive, although she had a sore neck, a bruised face, and her eyes were red from the hemorrhaging. But she had survived, and she was going to use her voice against her attacker. It wasn't long after the attack when Kelly Todd Brewer bravely took the stand and testified during a preliminary examination in a Kalamazoo courthouse. She had no doubt that Tim Forshee was her assailant. She was 100% sure. At this point, not only was Tim the lead suspect in Maria Willson's murder, but more than a dozen women had come forward to report that Tim had choked them or had acted menacingly towards them. The women had reported the incidents to the sheriff's office after Maria's death.
There were a lot of missed opportunities that he should have been held accountable long before what happened to Maria happened to her. She'd still fucking be alive if people had paid attention and other women had stepped up and reported him. That made me really mad that you don't let men get away with this kind of behavior. You don't do it because they just keep, every time they get away with it, it emboldens them and they just ratchet it up. Like we hear so much, so often with so many cases. He could have been stopped much earlier. And, Maria in particular would still be alive.
But even after Maria's death, when more than a dozen women came forward about Tim strangling them, authorities didn't use their stories to build their case.
He should never have been on the streets. to go after me. He should have been behind bars at that time. What I was told was after Maria's murder, whoever was the county prosecutor at that time, I guess, I don't know if that would have been his title, did not feel they had enough evidence to go after him on the murder charge. But there certainly was a fair amount of circumstantial, and there certainly was, they could have potentially introduced maybe not prior bad acts, but that there's a pattern here of how he treats women. Yes, I was pissed off. I was pissed off at the judicial system, at, law enforcement, at other women. Yeah.
In the meantime, Tim was put back in prison for violating the probation from his embezzlement crime. This time, he was sentenced to 40 to 60 months in prison. When Kelly testified in court about her harrowing escape, there were so many realtors that came to support her, the proceedings had to be moved to a bigger courtroom, according to the Kalamazoo Gazette. Kelly, who remained a realtor for several years after the attack, said the local Realtors Association raised awareness in the hopes of protecting other realtors.
They published a booklet, which I have, and, they tried to raise some awareness and do some training and that kind of thing. It scared the shit out of people, women specifically. I mean, many of our male colleagues offered to go, to either co-host open houses, or many women started having their husbands attend, stay with them during the open houses. I think it pushed a couple of my colleagues out of the business earlier than they might have. I mean, they were close to maybe thinking about retirement, but they left a little sooner than they might have otherwise. And I did have, a couple of times, I think afterwards, I did have male agents go with me on a showing when I was feeling a little uneasy.
The publicity from Kelly's attack caused yet another woman to come forward to law enforcement and report Tim's predatory behavior. This was from May 2001, a few months before Maria's death. This woman worked as a hairstylist at the Maple Oak Mall and cut Tim's hair. He seemed cute, she said. He started coming in regularly to get his haircut and then asked her out for drinks. They met at Chi-Chi's restaurant. They went on a second date, Chi-Chi's again. Then they went to Tim's place. They drove separately. The woman told the sheriff's office she is unsure why, but on the way to Forshe's house, she contacted her father via cell phone and told him where she was going and who she was with in case something went wrong. She says she does not normally do this, but had an uncomfortable feeling. When she got to Tim's, it was clean and well organized, and Tim had already prepped the wine glasses in the freezer. They began making out, which led to sex, and that's when Tim, who was on top of her, began to wrap his hands around her neck, taking the thumbs of both hands and pressing down on the center of her throat area, wrapping his fingers to the side of her neck, according to the sheriff's report. She squirmed and got free. When they were done having sex, she got dressed to leave. She felt uncomfortable about everything. While in the process of getting dressed, she states that she went to grab a hair tie that she had brought with her to wear in her hair. However, Forshe grabbed that and asked if he could keep that as a memento or a remembrance of the occasion. The woman, feeling afraid, said okay. She just wanted to leave. Tim later called her several times asking her out, but the woman continuously rejected him. 2 months later, he called her again and wanted to buy sex toys from her. The woman's side hustle was selling sex toys from a catalog. She told him he would need to come into the hair salon to look at the catalog because she would only meet him in public places. She never heard from him again. Although the hairstylist story was just one more in the ever-growing list of women who had accused Tim Forshe of attacking them, her account of Tim asking for a memento struck a dark similarity with Maria Willson's murder. It was March 2004, and the prosecution was presenting evidence during a preliminary examination, which would determine whether or not the case would go to trial. Tim Forshee had finally officially been charged with not only the attack on Kelly, but the murder of Maria Willson. This time, a new voice spoke out in the courtroom. Not Tim Forshee's former girlfriends or ex-friends who said he had strangled them. It was a man, a jailhouse informant named Robert Dyson. Kalamazoo County Sheriff Michael Anderson told the Kalamazoo Gazette that Tim had been a murder suspect early on in Maria's death, but that the DA needed more evidence. In January 2004, he told the newspaper, "Very recently, we received additional information that culminated in enough evidence for probable cause. We obviously needed to satisfy the prosecution's perception in this matter. The passage of time will bring additional information. That's what happened here." Robert Dyson had a long criminal record, which included armed robbery at a tobacco shop. He was in the Kalamazoo County Jail at the same time as Tim Forshee, who had been there since he attacked Kelly. The two inmates struck up conversations while behind bars. Robert recalled that they also watched the finale of the reality show Joe Millionaire. In the finale of this dating show, there was a twist. Joe Millionaire had actually just been pretending to be wealthy. His love interests learned he was really poor at the end. According to Robert, Tim said, "Women ain't shit. They just thought he had money, and so they acted like they loved him, but they really didn't care about him." Robert said Tim was so angry by the show, his face turned beet red. There were other inmates around them, but Tim wasn't a real loud talker, Robert testified, so it sounded like the other inmates couldn't overhear their conversation. Tim and Robert, otherwise strangers until their fates had brought them together in jail, also talked about weightlifting. Their conversation then drifted to what happened that put them behind bars and how they could get out. Robert said Tim wanted guidance and was looking at how to get out of his criminal charges and perhaps get a plea deal. And he even confessed to what he did to Kelly. Robert testified, he basically was saying he went to an open house and saw her, met her, and choked her. Tim told him he had scouted the open house and noticed Kelly's hair color, blondish. As for the motive, he said something to the fact that she was a pitiful bitch, Robert testified. The prosecutor asked, did he indicate what he intended to do to her when he was choking her? To kill her, Robert said. He said Tim actually thought he had killed Kelly when he choked her from behind. She struggled. He thought she was dead, Robert testified. When she came to life, he was in shock, and he let her go. He said Tim wanted to know Robert's opinion on his defense strategy. He was considering denying that he was the one who had strangled Kelly. That'll just be my word against hers, because there ain't no other witnesses to it, Tim had said. He also was considering pleading insanity if the mistaken identity defense didn't pan out. Robert said he doubted a jury would buy it, but told Tim, when it comes to a jury, nobody don't know what's going to happen, man. Tim also talked about choking another woman, Maria Williams or Willson. Robert tried to remember her name. Tim again brought up his victim's hair color. Maria's hair was dirty blonde. It offended Tim, who didn't like bleached hair. I think that kind of hair pissed him off, Robert testified. Something about the kind of hair, because every time he brought it up, he got mad. He thought they were pitiful, like trying to be something they weren't. Robert was keenly aware of some details and oblivious to others. He gave an address where Tim met Maria, on Alpha Court, where she lived. He didn't know how they met, but said Tim and Maria had been dating. He was going with her, I guess, Robert testified. He said something about how he borrowed some money from her. She found out. She said he stole it. She was claiming to go to the authorities, but she was giving him the chance to give it back. How much it was, I don't know. Tim went to smooth her over, Robert testified, because she was going to go to the authorities. So he went there to, kick it with her, smooth over, like he was going to pay her back. So they had sex. Robert testified that Tim said he and Maria had consensual sex at the house on Alpha Court, and afterwards, Tim then strangled her to death with his hands. To the judge, Robert demonstrated the motion that Tim said he made. When Maria was dead, Tim photographed her body for a memento, he said. Did Tim describe the feelings he had when he killed Maria? Tim talked about it like having an erection, but on the inside, Robert testified. He said he wrapped her up in something, meaning like a blanket or something, put her in the trunk of her car, and took her somewhere where he only described to me was a place where you go in like one way in, one way out, like a business type area. He never said the name of the street. Tim chose the street near the community college in the rural township's commercial area because he knew the area over there like the back of his hand, Robert testified. Here's what he said happened when Tim drove Maria's car to Elm Valley Drive and left it there. He drove it back there and he was getting ready to do something and somebody pulled up, so I guess he panicked, Robert testified. He had some clothes he took from her and some other little items, and then he left the car running, left the keys in the car. I guess he already planned to take her there because he said he had a car parked somewhere else, not too far away. Tim told Robert that after he strangled her, he stripped her, took off her jeans and blouse. The stuff Tim took from Maria, including her key ring, he threw under Portage Road. It's like a river or something that leads to one pond to the next pond, Robert testified. Tim also got rid of his own clothes. Investigators were able to confirm some of the details Robert gave. He said Tim had told him Maria had a round moon-shaped mole on her lower back. When Tim talked about it, he seemed to be talking about it to himself. He was saying that she had this pretty little mole, but he really wasn't looking at me. He was staring down by the floor like I wasn't really there. He was getting off on it, Robert testified. I don't know how I can put it in words for you. Sure enough, when Detective Donald McGahey looked at the autopsy photos, there was a mark on Maria's lower back. But when Detective McGahey looked for evidence Robert said Tim had thrown out in Portage near the water, he didn't find anything. And when investigators searched Tim's home and his motel room, they never found any photographs taken of Maria's dead body. So some of Robert's testimony could be verified. Other pieces could not. Robert testified that he had never read about Maria's death in the newspaper or saw it on the news. At the time, he was in prison in another part of the state and didn't get out until 2002. He also said he was not given anything in exchange for his testimony in court. Nothing has been promised to me and nobody came to me, he said. As Robert testified, Tim, dressed in an orange jail jumpsuit, sat impassively during most of the hearing, according to the Kalamazoo Gazette. He was occasionally seen writing a note to his attorney, Roger Snell, clenching his jaw or pursing his lips during the 3.5-hour hearing. Susan Helt, a bartender and manager at Mi Ranchito, also testified. According to Susan, Tim arrived at Mi Ranchito the night of Maria's murder first. He sat in the middle of the empty bar. She said she didn't recognize him as a familiar face. He wasn't a regular customer. Then, when Maria arrived, I really don't know how to say it, Susan testified. At first, we didn't know if she had been drinking, and you have to watch for that as a bartender. But something was wrong with Maria, Susan testified. I really don't know how to explain it. Maria ordered a fajita salad before her overnight work shift. It was late on a rainy, cold Monday. She and Tim were talking, not arguing, Susan testified. She assumed they were together, like they were meeting there. Susan was too busy cleaning up and serving the last table, so she didn't overhear any of what they were saying. As the night went on, however, Susan picked up on their body language. As a bartender, pouring drinks and watching people, she knew how to read her customers. She said Tim seemed to be embarrassed when Maria left for a moment to go to the bathroom. Later, he acted like he was upset or embarrassed, Susan testified. He was just very rude to her, like he was embarrassed that she was sitting next to him and put off about it. Tim then made a comment to Susan. Maria was stalking him. Was that his word, the prosecutor asked? Stalking? Yes, Susan said. When two middle-aged men walked in and sat down, Maria got up from the bar and joined them at their table, like she knew them, Susan testified. I didn't know what they were talking about. At one point, she lifted up her shirt. She had her sports bra. Maria, who had gone to the gym earlier that night, seemed to be showing off her stomach muscles and then put her shirt back down. Maria then ate some of her meal, took her doggy bag with the leftovers, and then left, with Tim still at the bar. Susan said Tim then opened up to her. She bothers him a lot, she testified. He said he knew her from Culver's. I don't remember a lot of the little bits and pieces of what he said. He was afraid to leave because she might still be outside. Another Mi Ranchito employee went as far as to check outside to make sure Maria wasn't by Tim's vehicle. 10 or 15 minutes after Maria left, Tim, the final customer of the night, left too. Detective McGahey went over the timeline of October 15, 2001, during his testimony at the hearing. Maria had gone to the gym, then Mi Ranchito, and then after that, a Citgo gas station at around 11 p.m. She was inside Citgo for about 5 minutes, purchasing a drink and something else, spending $12. The gas station surveillance video then showed Maria, dressed in a dark hooded jacket or sweatshirt, blue jeans, and shoes. She appeared to be looking for somebody. She was walking around the store for the first few minutes, and then it looks like she walks over to the door, stands at the door while looking outside, and exits, Detective McGahey testified. Dana Core, a supplier for the auto industry, operated a facility on Elm Valley Drive. The facility's extensive video surveillance system captured Maria's car going in the cul-de-sac. A red car, it was impossible to see if it was a Dodge, but looked like Maria's neon, appeared on camera at about 3:50 a.m. It's real hard to gain perspective on the video. It didn't appear as it was driving extremely fast. Looked to be just traveling at a consistent speed for the road, Detective McGahey testified. 20 minutes after the red car was filmed going west, a lone person appears in the surveillance video walking in the opposite direction, east on Elm Valley Drive. The figure wasn't clear. You couldn't tell if it was a man or a woman, but it was around 4:05 or 4:10 a.m. After learning about Maria's interaction with Tim, Detective Sergeant Bruce Wiersma was able to track him down. It was October 19th, 3 days after Maria's murder. He testified that he went to Tim's farmhouse, and as he was chatting with the landlord, Tim pulled up in the driveway. I indicated that I was investigating the Willson homicide and that I knew he had been at Mi Ranchito with her socializing, to be one of the last people that was with her, and basically questioned him about what he knew about the victim and what they might have talked about while at the Mi Ranchito, Detective Sergeant Wiersma testified. He indicated that they were just talking, nothing specific. How did he appear to you as you're questioning him about Maria Willson? The prosecutor asked. When he got out of the vehicle and approached me after I identified myself, I could tell that he was visibly shaking at that point, literally shaking. You could see that? I could. From how far away? 3 feet. Even though it was late October, a brisk 50 degrees outside, Tim was sweating profusely. I mentioned to him, what's going on, Tim? Are you nervous? You're sweating and shaking. Tim said he was trying to pass a kidney stone. A kidney stone moving through your urinary tract often causes extreme pain, but Tim didn't show any signs of displeasure. I did mention to him that it was coincidental that he had been with her, the last person seen with her that we knew of at the time, and that the scene would be close proximity to his residence, where she was located, Detective Sergeant Wiersma testified. Did you ask him if he ever saw Maria Willson again after she left Mi Ranchito? The prosecutor asked. He said yes, but that Tim denied he had. Tim said he went home. Dr. Joyce DeJong conducted Maria's autopsy. At the time of her death, 5-foot Maria was very thin, only 95 pounds. Both of her eyes had hemorrhages. Her neck had scrapes and bruises. Even under the skin, beyond the bruises, there were more hemorrhages internally in Maria's neck. Dr. DeJong testified the hemorrhaging neck muscles were primarily in the front and the side of Maria's neck. In essence, there are bruises of the muscles throughout all layers of the neck, right up to the cervical spine, right into that area there was bleeding. There were bruises on Maria's lower back, too. As for other bruises on her body, the prosecutor asked if those could be consistent with her resisting or struggling. She said yes. I have no doubt that this is a strangulation, she testified. The manner of death, homicide. When the testimony was finished, the prosecutor argued that there was enough evidence to go forward with trial. What the court has before it is obviously two people that were associated. Not real clear as to what happened, he said. At some point, obviously, something went terribly wrong because her body was found by the detectives the next day. I think what it shows is that there's obviously a motive here. He had some problems with her that he had to resolve. The opportunity because he was with her, probably the last person or one of the last people to be with her before she was found killed. His actions afterwards, after being contacted by the police, are clearly indicative of a guilty mind. He left his job, took all the money, and left the area. He fled. Apparently, he tried to make it look like she was in her own car and ran off the road type of thing. Unfortunately, he didn't quite make it. The car got hung up, and it's hard to say what happened. Did he try to break back in to get the car further off the road? All we know is there's a big rock and a hole through the windshield. So apparently his attempts to get the car off the road and down that little ravine there, as you can see from the photographs, weren't successful. Tim's attorney brought up the lack of physical evidence in the case. Physical evidence. There is none that my client was the perpetrator of this murder, Roger Snell told the judge. There's no bodily fluids. There are no fingerprints. There's no evidence at all that he committed this act. It's a circumstantial case. It's a circumstantial case with a jailhouse snitch as a corroborator. As for Tim's decision to flee, he said that was only because Tim was guilty of embezzlement. But being a thief does not make Tim a murderer. The judge sided with the prosecution and was satisfied by the testimony against Tim, so the case was bound over for trial. Maria's mother, Joanne Willson, was relieved her daughter's killer was going to finally be charged with her death. She told the Kalamazoo Gazette, "It's been 27 months." But she also said, "This doesn't give me any real closure. My daughter is dead." Kelly spoke with us about the aftermath of her attack.
The night that I was attacked, I called two people. I called my brother-in-law, who I mentioned to you is a retired Sarasota County Sheriff's detective. And I called, and I'm not particularly close to that brother-in-law, but I did call him, and I called Pat Guilford, who was a psychologist that I knew. I had been seeing her. Both of them said the same thing to me. Basically, that was, he has done this before and he will do it again. So hearing that from two people, different professions, but told me what I needed to do, which was to try to hold him accountable. But the other thing Pat had said to me was, "Kelly, you need to keep talking about this. And because you will eventually, you need to process it. And there'll come a time when you will get tired of talking about it, but you need to process it. You need to process it without drugs." So I did not take any kind of sleeping pills or any kind of sedatives or, anti-anxiety meds or any of that. And I talked about it a lot. I could always handle what happened to me fine. What hurt me and disturbed me more were things that were said to me and how other people chose to handle it or didn't handle it. The people who showed up, the people who didn't show up, people who stayed present and were supportive. And you learn a lot about the people in your life when you go through something like that. Friends, family, colleagues, we had a general manager at the time, a woman, who made the comment to one of my colleagues and friend that, essentially that I had probably brought it on myself because I was so high strung.
People also dissected Kelly's actions, asking her, why didn't she do this? Why didn't she do that?
People ask me I have so many questions, and there was so much victim blaming. Somebody said to me, why didn't you make a run for it? And I did think about it because there were stairs right there, and there was a door at the top of the stairs that went out to the driveway.
But Kelly said she instead focused on staying calm and not making any sudden movements.
People say to me, "Oh, I would have been so angry. Why wouldn't, after he stopped strangling?" And normally I would be, but I don't know, that just, my father had died 2 years earlier, and I really think he was with me. Yeah, I think he was my guardian angel.
And what about when she was out of the house with Tim, who was still lingering by her car?
I remember one of the police officers, I don't know if it's the patrol officer, somebody asked me, why didn't you hit the alarm on your, hit an alarm on the key fob? Again, questioning. And again, everything said, stay calm. And then my husband said, why didn't you run him over on his bike? And I'm like, well, yeah, I'd probably be the one in the hot seat if I'd done that. I had so many people come up to me and say to me, well, what do you think would have happened if you had been carrying, if I'd been carrying a gun, or if you could have concealed carried? Again, why should it be on me to do that? We should live in a world where women shouldn't have to think that way. We shouldn't have to constantly be on guard against assaultive predatory behavior by men. Why is it the onus on us? You put the onus on the perpetrator, not on the victim.
Tim Forshee didn't have a trial. In a plea deal, he pleaded guilty to second-degree murder, assault with intent to commit murder, and assault with intent to do great bodily harm. The most serious charge, murder, could normally be punished with life in prison without the possibility of parole. But under the plea, Tim's defense and the prosecution agreed on a lighter sentence of 25 to 50 years. Both the Willson family and Kelly Todd Brewer were involved during the plea talks.
The plea involved talking with Maria's family, the Wilsons. I think they were concerned that their daughter's name and reputation was going to be dragged through the mud. I think they were really concerned. And I told Sherry I will defer to whatever the Wilson family wants to do. Their daughter is not here, and I still am. So I was fine with going to court and testifying. There was always the chance, with a jury that you might not get the result that you're hoping for. They certainly can. Nothing's ever a slam dunk, even though it might look like a slam dunk. So taking a plea is sometimes the better option.
And so Tim accepted the plea deal. The judge asked him, was he guilty of assault with intent of murdering Kelly Todd Brewer on November 9th, 2003? Tim said yes. I did intend to kill her. The judge asked, was he guilty of murdering Maria Willson on October 16th, 2001? Yes, sir, I did, Tim told the judge. What did you do? The judge asked. Tim responded, I returned home from a restaurant down the road and entered my home, and Ms. Willson came to my door, and I repeatedly asked her to leave. She finally did leave. A few minutes later, she came back to the door and we started arguing, and she had her top off, but I got angry and I grabbed her by the throat and proceeded to choke her. Did you intend to kill her? The judge asked. Yes, Your Honor, I did, Tim answered. The judge accepted the pleas. Tim was back in court on April 12, 2004 for his official sentencing. The prosecutor said, the only word that can be used to describe him is that he's a predator. He preys on women for the sole purpose of victimizing them. And I think the most frightening aspect of his crimes is the pattern of escalation that he's demonstrated by his conduct over the years. Tim was given an opportunity to address the court. He kept it short. I'd like to apologize to the families involved for the sorrow and despair that I caused them, including my own immediate family, he said. Then the judge spoke, saying he doesn't pretend to be a psychologist, but that within Tim Forshee is a raging beast. Maria's mother, Joanne Willson, gave a victim impact statement where she described Maria as a golfer a kayaker, nature walker, and an employee with a perfect attendance. Did Maria bargain for her life? Can we bargain to see Maria in this lifetime again? Can we hope that the lifetime of grief and pain caused by Tim Forshee be dealt away? We miss Maria every day, she said. According to Joanne, she had been raising Maria's daughter, who by then was 14. Despite all the trauma of losing her mother, she was thriving. She had straight A's, sang, danced ballet, and won the lead in plays. Joanne said the girl hadn't want to come to court because Tim was the monster in her closet and the boogeyman hiding in the shadows. Kelly also addressed the court and her assailant. She wanted Tim to know how what happened terrified other realtors across the country. His attack frightened her children, who had almost lost their mother. One of her twins had trouble sleeping. I have tried hard to find the positive throughout this ordeal. By far the most positive aspect has been the knowledge that I am the woman who finally held you accountable for your actions, Kelly testified. Having menaced and harassed women in this community for years, I believe there were missed opportunities for others to hold you accountable as well. Had any one of them done so, perhaps Maria Willson would be alive today, and the sheer terror I endured on November 9th might never have been part of my life experiences. To quote the author and statesman Edmund Burke, the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing, Kelly said. I take comfort in the fact that I did something to prevent you from harming more women. The judge sentenced him to a minimum of 27 years and 9 months in prison. His maximum sentence was up to 50 years, with credit for 131 days served. The prosecutor said, the agreement reached in this case ensured that the defendant will be sent to prison where he can no longer harm any other women. It guarantees that he will not be eligible for parole until he is at least 66 years old, and it guarantees that the victims in these cases will see him punished for his crimes.
Unfortunately, they linked the two cases together, so he serves time concurrently, not consecutively, for Maria's murder and my attempt. And that didn't make me real happy, but it's what it is.
Tim's attorney said this bargain does allow him the possibility, through examining his own nature, to have an opportunity to potentially be outside the prison system. However, the judge told Tim, the court here strongly recommends you shall never be paroled. The last words Maria's mother said at Tim's sentencing were, Maria's family and friends will demonstrate their conviction and strength at any hearing to never let you obtain such a parole. May you serve a lifetime in prison to reflect on the murder of our loved one, Maria Willson. And Kelly, who looks up Tim online once a year, if that, to check his inmate status, said,
if I need to, and I'll rally the troops, I'll get realtors back in Kalamazoo. And, anybody that, it doesn't matter if they're in the business, even if they're retired. I've told my daughters, if for some reason I'm not alive, you need to get your asses back there. So, yeah.
We asked Kelly what she hopes listeners take away from her story.
What I want people to know is anytime a woman comes forward and says she's been preyed upon or assaulted by a man, your first reaction should be to believe her, period. Now, are there women that report falsely? Yes, but it's infinitesimal to the number of women that are preyed upon, assaulted by men, many of whom never bother to come forward to the point in this case where there were a lot of women that it happened to and they didn't come forward because they probably thought that they were not going to be believed or they were going to be victim blamed or whatever. So that's number one. You need to believe them until proven otherwise. And I still think there's a lot of good people in the world. There's a lot of not good people too. But you can't probably be as blindly trusting as I might have been as a woman, in certain situations and really need to pay attention to your gut, be aware of your surroundings and your exits. So there's that. And I would say the other thing that I really would want to emphasize is that when somebody has gone through something like this, it doesn't have to be exactly like this, but remain present. Don't run away. Deal with your own uncomfortable emotions about it. Be there for that person because it isn't about you. It's about them. Show up, and stay there, back them up and be there for them and just listen. Okay. Don't say, well, I would have done this or I would have done that, or, really work hard not to do with the victim blaming and the victim shaming. And if men do something like this to, you are preyed upon, you are assaulted by a man, speak up and report it. Because the next woman might not be as lucky. You got away. And that drove me because I thought, okay, I got away, but the next woman might not be so lucky. And I would never be able to live with myself. I wouldn't be able to live with my conscience if that had happened.
Today, Tim is a 62-year-old prison inmate at Muskegon Correctional Facility. His release date could be as early as 2031, with the latest possible release date as 2054, according to the Michigan Department of Corrections. And that's all for this episode. I want to thank Kelly Todd Brewer for so bravely and heroically sharing her story with us and allowing us to share it with all of you. I also want to thank Maria Willson, who researched and wrote this two-part series on this case. This one was a difficult one for her to cover. If you try to search for this case online, you'll see that information is very hard to come by. She had to make multiple public records requests to read the transcripts, sheriff's records, and court filings. Also, this case began more than 25 years ago, and so a lot of the investigators and people involved have either moved on to new jobs or retired. So I just want to say thank you from me to Gabrielle for her hard work in getting all of the info she did for this one. For me, I think this was an important story to tell. If you'd like to join the discussion on this case, you can find us on Instagram at CourtJunkie, or you can always email us at podcast@courtjunkie.com. Thanks again for listening. Until next time. There's a new mental health-focused podcast called Collect Your Thoughts. Collect Your Thoughts is a weekly podcast hosted by therapists Sean Millhouse and Jason LeCompte that dives into the conversations we all need but rarely have about connection, identity, adulting, and the messy, meaningful stuff in between. With warmth, insight, and a touch of humor, Jason and Sean blend personal stories, professional wisdom, and practical tools that listeners can actually use. New episodes drop every week, so hit follow and join the conversation. Listen wherever you get your podcasts, or you can learn more at bentonvillecounseling.com/podcast.